was already it's incredible. Yeah, it is interesting.
If you want to scooch out a bit, you can. But this is what happens when you've got 20 people running and a historic wine line. All right, let's get started. So thank you all for coming. Welcome to the first night of the Asheville Black Town Hall. So I told the candidates when they got here, there's no stump speech tonight because I'm sure they're tired of saying them and we've all heard them. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a series of yes or no questions. So I'll ask the question, on one end, we'll take, who has the mic? Give the mic to Scott.
His name's not lying though.
If I think something you said needs to be clarified, if you would like the mic, put your hand up and ask your colleague. They'll come, they'll take your boards, and then about halfway through, we'll take a potty break, since they're on stage, and then we'll come back and we'll do audience questions. Yeah? Great. So, first question, yes or no? Do you agree that the local Black community, while diverse in thought and legacy, has shared common interests and a unique set of obstacles that make this event tonight both useful and necessary for council to understand the local community? Yes? Raise your hand.
Can you repeat it?
Thank you. Repeat it, please.
Yes.
Your voice is not coming through.
So can you hear me is a real question.
You sound a little muffled, quite frankly.
I'm sorry, Kyle. I did debate in high school. I can figure this out. So, do you agree that the local Black community, while diverse in thought and legacy, has shared common interests and a unique set of obstacles that make tonight's event both useful and necessary for council to understand the local community? Yes? And then put your hands down. No. Great. Number two, do you agree that certain issues facing the Black community in Asheville, the racial wealth gap, reading comprehension, justice system involvement, are indicative of the need for systemic change and direct investments into the community to address those issues? Yes. Great. Number three, the city's Reparation Commission proposed 39 city actions and recommendations to address past harms and disenfranchisement of the Black community. Do you support the implementation and prioritization of those actions? Yes. Yes? No. No. Okay. Number four, do you support Asheville continuing to fund reparations work beyond symbolic resolutions with dedicated dollars each budget cycle? Yes and no's.
How many no's?
I got two no's. Number five, do you support setting measurable targets for city contracts going to Black-owned businesses? Yes. Measurable goals. Measurable targets for city contracts going to Black-owned businesses.
Targets.
Yes. And now your no's. Okay. Should the city shift additional funding from policing to community-based violence prevention programs? Yes. And your no's. I'm gonna stop for a second. We're getting some yes and no answers, and then you will have time to contextualize why you want one way or the other. But our hope here is for you to tell us how, because at the end of the day, you have to vote if you are on council. How would you vote? And then after you give me your answer, we got a whole hour for y'all to talk back and forth about why you vote yes or no. Yes? Okay. So we'll try that one again. Do you support, no, listen. Should the city shift additional funding from policing to community-based violence prevention programs? All in favor, yes? And then no. Okay.
Should. Maybe.
Do you believe black residents in Asheville are policed differently than white residents? Yes. And no.
I don't know.
Now, Kyle, no. Which way you going with that? Yes or no, sir?
I think it's easier for me to explain no.
Okay. Final yes or no. Will you commit to not voting for a budget that does not pay all Asheville City employees a living wage? Yes.
Can you ask that again, please? Yeah.
Will you commit to not voting on a budget that does not pay all Asheville City employees a living wage? Yes.
But
We can talk about it.
yeah.
No. Okay. So, those are yes and no's. I'm gonna start with Scott because there was a lot of hesitance with a few of these for a couple of y'all. I'm gonna give each of you 1 minute to contextualize your no's, if you feel need to. Starting with Scott.
Okay, so some of the questions I think I voted no to, continuing the reparations work. I first learned about the reparations committee in the summer when I saw that our Justice Department wrote a letter that said we're going to sue the pants off of Asheville City Council, Asheville City, if they implement any of these things. And like most people, I thought, well, this is a lot of hot air coming out, and so I'm going to read the reparations committee report. And there's 38 different items on there. And I read them thinking about how a lawyer or a judge might look at them. And the vast majority of them said we are going to give funding and money to a certain subset of people based on their race. And that is not going to work in the society that we live in. We have rules against that kind of thing, and we've seen already how if we were to implement that, it would get sued immediately and just shot down. So I think that if we actually are going to be honest about a commitment to reparative justice and repairing the inequality in our society, we have to make sure that we're honest with the law and do it under the law.
And pass your mic down.
So I believe my one no, and then I want to contextualize a couple of yeses, was to would I shift funding from APD to violence prevention services. I strongly believe we need more funding for violence prevention services. I think we need to make sure that the Family Justice Center is functioning well to help diversion. But at the same time, the police department has to keep up with salaries because we're losing police officers to other communities. Our police force is our police force. If we have a failure in how they are implementing the law, that's on council, and we need to make sure that our officers have training. The other piece is measurable performance goals for Black-owned businesses getting city contracts. We used to do that, and that used to be in the state. When I used to work in the legislature, it was in state law that we had preferences for those contracts. So we need to be given the legislature we have right now. We got to be cautious how we do it. We also have a Justice Department that's breathing down our neck. So we got 39 great recommendations. Those aren't things we can just pass with a vote. We need to institutionalize them as part of our
Pass
system.
your mic.
Oh, sure. I feel like I had a couple of no's, but you could read the question because it was really about the words that you used. I'm definitely supportive in every way possible for a living wage for everybody who works for the city. Taking it from another budget or not giving it seems like potentially how we got where we are with a $30 million structural deficit. So I think we need the funding, but I don't know that we should take from one to give to the other. It's all important. Can you give me my other answers for no?
Next round.
Oh.
Next round, I'll come back to you when you're done. Go ahead.
Yes, well, I'd like to support the Reparations Act. I think the 39 recommendations could be gone over, but I'd like to see 39 ordinances, laws, statutes, things that we could actually really use that hold the police accountable, hold the city accountable to the things that go on that, well, no harm done to us. Well, that should be something that the city implements with the police department, not reparations funding that the county, the state. So those are some of the things that I'd like to kind of work on to see if we can kind of unite
Okay.
and put Asheville together for the rest of the black communities that's struggling.
I guess the first one I'll address is the shift in funds. That's a very interesting question to me. I remember a few years ago when folks were talking about defunding the police. I was in a room with folks and I said, sometimes being a black woman means at times you're not a woman and at times you're not black. I think when we talk about policing, we don't consider black women in particular. During that discussion, I brought up that black women, even though we're around 3.5% of the city, we're 20% of victims of domestic violence. So the question I asked a colleague was, if we defund or reduce the number of police we have by 15 or 20, have we considered how many black women will die as a result? And it was dead silence because nobody had thought about it. So I'm hesitant at any time to swiftly go yes or no without the actual data. What I can also tell you is I'm probably the only one here that came this close to suing the Asheville Police Department. I represented Johnny Rush. If you've been around long enough, you know what that was about. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Hello. I also wanted to touch on that topic as well, just because it's a more information moment too, because I understand we all want to sleep well at night. I'm also a small business owner. I want my business to be secured at night. And I feel like there might be more information if I had available that would make me feel like more definitive about one. But I know one thing for certain, I want to make sure that our police force have what they need to be able to safely and securely work for us and protect us as citizens. I would be interested in exploring and just seeing more about other ways and opportunities that we could potentially fundraise to help support other issues. So a lot of things that is not talked about a lot in our city is bringing in private sector to help supplement and support and create kind of interesting new ideas that may help us in thinking out of the box, be able to sometimes bridge gaps and support different kinds of programs through community support-led initiatives. So there's sometimes we forget there are other ways to raise and find and build money. So I would say it's a yes. It's yes, let's make that money happen, but there might be a different way in which we can build up those programs from a revenue perspective.
That's mine. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thank you, JD. Hi, everybody. I'm Jess Young McLean. And to give a little context to my yeses for a lot of the questions that were asked there, mine were based out of the lived experience of people I work with, the lived experience of students and families I have the opportunity to get to know and spend time with. In my work at Region 60 Asheville Buncombe, we're based in Pisgah View Apartments. And I do want to respond to some of what I've heard, a lot of what I have learned through anti-racist practices in education is also understanding that if every single law in our country was designed for the affirmative action of white people who look like me, then relying on the law to serve black communities is not going to cut it. and that all of the things that JD asked us if we would do is through an understanding that we have to be extra intentional as a council, as a consensus building body. We have to be super thoughtful. We have to talk to folks who have the lived experience of being a Black woman, being a Black man, or being a Black family in Asheville. And fundamentally, education is where I believe it starts.
So I'm going to speak to the policing because I was kind of in the middle. And I do think we can use our violence prevention teams more. I do not believe we should take the money from the police. We need police. We need the violence prevention teams when we're talking about building community and being out there, and maybe they can help work with the police in the sheriff's department on policing the community and finding better ways to police. But when I'm in trouble, I'm gonna call the police, because violence prevention teams unfortunately can't arrest anybody and they can only do so much. So we need the police. Not only do we need them, we need to make sure that they're funded in a way that they're not overworked, burned out, and stretched thin, so that they're not just policing one zip code, they're policing the community at large and not just certain areas of town based on optics. So no. So that's why I was in the middle. I do believe we can have more violence prevention teams, and we put some structure around that and make sure we hold them accountable as well, but we don't take the money from the police.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Moritz. I answered yes to all the questions. I want to address two of them. The first one is the living wage. I'm very focused on the budget. We have 217 people that are being paid below the living wage, 17% of the city staff. But it's slightly below the living wage. It would only cost us $755,000 per year to pay everybody the living wage. So anybody who doesn't agree with that, the fact that we've increased our budget so much, but yet we can't pay living wage is shameful, because the amount is actually quite small. The second one is we've increased our staffing budget by $45 million in the past 5 years. That's to go to staff in the city. I would much rather spend that money in the community, and I think we could easily implement the 38 points. It says 39, but I counted 38, so I don't know how many it really is. But those points there, I would be in favor of investing in our legacy neighborhoods, and the city should be more thoughtful about the budget and not spend it on the staff at the city, but spend it in the community.
Tiffany, did you want to speak to that? Because it started with the nose, and then everybody started contextualizing it. So go ahead.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Debelo. I wanted to speak to the violence prevention and divesting in the police. And the reason why I said yes is because we rely heavily on our community or our community organizations to do a lot of the heavy lifting in our neighborhoods as a form of community policing. There is also not enough accountability on our police department here in Asheville. And so it feels almost as if when we say we want to pull from a thing to add to a thing, that entity is going to lose anything. And I just don't see the police department or any shifting in funding to put it to good use will take away from Asheville being a safe space or public safety. I believe it's time that we start to work together. And if we're looking at these high entities that has been in this space and place for generations with nothing but harm to our Black communities, then why is it hard to do something different?
So I have a few follow-ups for our next question. I want to start with Jeffrey, two boroughs. When you talk about private investment, a lot of folks in Asheville see a lot of public-private partnerships with a lot of nonprofits, and there's a lot of lip service to progressive values, but it ends up just being a lot of white residents, high-income folks, and new residents to town who get all this money, but that money doesn't seem to make it to the Black community. So if you're pitching more public-private partnerships, how are you going to make sure that all of the nonprofits and all of the organizations involved are supporting Black communities?
Yeah, so actually this happened, so I chair the economy for the Helene Recovery Boards, and this came up at our last meeting. So we went ahead, staff had gone through and said we should approve this and fast track this $15.5 million. The 5 groups that were going to be the sub-recipients were Venture, Mountain BizWorks, Arts ADL, and Eagle Street Market. So the interesting thing though was that $855,000 was the full amount of the venture capital allocated money, and the two groups that were partially funded were Arts ADL and Eagle Street Market. So to me, when we talk about this, it seems like whenever there's a moment, right, that we can either, one group representing a marginalized community over decades, and another group that is representing folks that were under 30 feet of water, right? And so when we look at this, we had a moment in time to actually put our money where our mouth was, and yet again, both organizations were partially funded. So when we're talking about equity, we first have to talk about access and barriers. So the first thing that we need to do to make sure that that is going to across the board, that we're having equity across the board, and also we have to be mindful just in CDGBDR, that as a HUD money federal funded event, we can't use that word legally. So we need to find a scoring system that allows us all to have a measured place to start. So when we're looking at that football line or that place that we're gonna go and start our sprint, we're all at the same line. That's the first thing we can do to measure, is by saying, is everybody starting from the same place? Are we all going to have that moment to be able to start from here? And then we can continue to build that through access and then measure data. So I could talk more about this, sorry.
Let's cut you off.
Yeah, but you know.
Pass your mic to Scott. Scott, your response to your yes and no's was that you didn't think that it could be done based on the society that we're in. Are you saying you disagree, or are you saying you don't think it could happen when it comes to reparations and defunding?
So let's just take giving money to black businesses.
But,
We can't legally do that. We can't.
but are you saying you disagree, or that you don't think it'll happen?
Well, if it can't legally happen, it's most likely not going to happen in that form. When we talk about equality, we need to focus on pocketbooks and bank accounts and the background that you come from. And that needs to be not colored by the lens of racism. And racism can go in all directions, but the way our laws are written, the equal rights that we fought to, we can't base our decisions based on skin color.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Kyle. My follow-up to you was something different, because you spoke about your support but not wanting to pass certain positions. And so I guess what does support for some of these yes and no's look like if you aren't voting yes if you're not voting yes to defund, and you're not voting yes for reparations, what does your support look like if you're on city council?
If I'm understanding, you are asking, where would the funding come from to continue reparations?
No, sorry, that's my fault. I was saying, on the things you said no to, what does your support for the black community look like if you're voting no on issues that are deemed important to the black community?
Assuming I'm voting no, I don't understand the question.
Okay.
I want to support reparations. I wanted to be a part of reparations. I don't feel like, and even be like the person that could support that. But my father got his VA loan, and other people in that area of town in Dunn, North Carolina, didn't get their loan. And my father did never have any discrimination. My father was able to call Jesse Helms and on the phone and talk to him. And I'm anti-racist because I was raised one.
Sure. So while I ask this next question, will you please pass it to David? We're going to our next community question. So this is for everyone, and we'll go through the line and we'll sort of have back and forth like we just had. Yeah? Okay. So in recent community conversations and media coverage, some residents have felt that legacy black neighborhoods are being implicitly blamed for Asheville's affordable housing shortage. How do you respond to that criticism?
I think that's wrong. I don't think the legacy neighborhoods are to blame. In fact, I spoke on behalf of the legacy neighborhoods at a meeting at City Council to defend their self-determination about some of the new zoning rules that they didn't want to participate in. And I think what people forget is some of the burden of the zoning changes are actually pushed onto some of the legacy neighborhoods because of the current zoning. So for example, the rules of the middle missing housing excludes RS2 and some of the zonings in North Asheville, but that's not reported on. So I think so the short answer is it's incorrect to blame those legacy neighborhoods.
Shonda?
So I agree that it's incorrect, and it's not the legacy neighborhoods that are increasing the cost of living in Asheville. And I think the city should be more supportive of the legacy neighborhoods in Asheville and be doing more to provide funding so that they can rebuild the neighborhoods and make sure that they remain equitable for all residents, and that the taxes and the income and the residents that are living there now and have lived in this community for years aren't continuing to be pushed out.
Ditto what both Shonda and David have said. I agree in that. I recently went to an urban night presentation all around urban renewal and redlining, and what they found is when that happened here in Asheville, a lot of what everybody knows in this room is that in addition to loads and loads of businesses, that about 3,000 homes were lost and created a home ownership gap. And if you look at that gap today between white families and black families, we also see that home ownership gap in the thousands. When news articles, outlets, and white-led entities take the time to say, hey, this is the fault of our legacy neighborhoods, it is most often explicitly to distract from the real core issue, which is fundamentally that this city continues to lift up white neighbors and oppress black neighbors in ways that result in wealth gaps and home ownership gaps. So that's my stance on that. Thank you.
Thanks. Obviously, legacy neighborhoods are not responsible for this, and I think what we're touching on is anti-risk displacement policies. And it is really essential and important, and I'm so thrilled that City Council is starting to work on this right now. But this is an imperative way that we can show up and let our neighborhoods represent themselves. We shouldn't be developed on, we should be developing with our neighbors. And we need to put policies and protection that allows those that have either lived here a long time to be able to be protected so that they're not at risk from being displaced. So for me, I would say that there is no way that the legacy neighborhoods could be responsible for something like this, but we need anti-risk displacement policies. And also, I think it's a really interesting thing that we should look at in that $565,000 that's in the economy for the lien recovery boards. We should look at potentially investing that into our neighborhood leaders. So again, I'm a community advocate, so I'm people first, so I think that that's a good opportunity.
Do I only have a minute?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to try and speak quickly. My name is mentioned in that article, and there are 3 council members who were explicitly blamed for standing up for legacy neighborhoods, therefore slowing down development. Those council members are myself, Antoinette Mosley, Shanika Smith, and Kim Rohde. And other council members, despite having 4 votes, Bo Hess, Maggie, the mayor, and Sage, all were in favor of moving forward without displacement protections. That's the realness of it. So I don't think those people knew that their names would be mentioned, but that's the dirty little secret. So if you were at the last event we had, you had a number of folks on the panel talking about they were for anti-displacement strategies, only to be endorsed the very next day by an organization that is absolutely not in favor. Pay attention, because people will say they're for you when in actuality they are not. Did I get it in a minute?
There you go. Mrs. Smith.
Well, I'd like to say I'm here for you. The whole reparations thing from the beginning felt like it was going to be a failure when it was announced. I don't think enough community effort went into it. I don't think enough community voices went into it. I'd like to see that change a little bit more where we get the communities, like the Reed Center when we were there the other night. We were 15 feet away from Livingston, Erskine, and nobody showed up. So my thing is to kind of point the finger and say, where do we take our responsibility in this and come out and show up and support and say, hey, look, enough is enough. Let's get us something on the board to straighten us out, monetary value, legally, educationally. Our children, Peak Academy, why is that the only black school in Asheville? They tried to shut that down with Carl Mumpower, if I'm not mistaken. So we have to have protection. We have to kind of unite together and say, hey, look, let's take this a little bit further and kind of, blend in and bring a little soul to Asheville that we have right here, even on Eagle Street, the block. You have the Foundry back here. I don't think anybody here could stay in the Foundry. So there is a wealth gap. Well, but the legacy neighborhoods go into this also, because for every hotel that's built, you take away property from us that we once owned and that we once were a part of. So all that can kind of combines in together to create this situation.
Kyle?
Legacy neighborhoods, I would support and will support the big picture at the time that it's presented. I will need all the information, and I will need to better understand the problem statement, how it might need to be fixed, and whether or not, who is able to decide. I mean, it seems like there's been quite a few decisions that haven't landed very well, and when I see council members not understanding what they voted for and what they did vote for, because now we see how it's landed, I'm not very happy about that when I'm sitting on the couch watching that hour-and-a-half YouTube video. There's a lot of room for improvement. I don't know if the 3 city council members that are there now need to stay, or whether they need to go somewhere and do some more work. But there's some work to be done.
All right, Tiffany?
By a show of hands, how many people remember Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society agenda from 1964 to 68? One of the major components of that agenda was urban renewal, which we already know what that did to many black neighborhoods. When we talk about rhetoric, falsification, and just straight lies about entities that have been fighting for generations to even just have a safe space to live, to have a place that they can call home, and to have a space where their community and their children can thrive, it's absurd to hear that the legacy neighborhoods are taking away affordable housing. That's another piece. I remember in 2010 when I watched the Shiloh community go to city council, and to be frank, I don't even know how long they've been trying to get that prior to 2010, but I remember the day that they received the charter to be a legacy neighborhood. So for any entity to say that black neighborhoods are taking housing is similar to what my colleague said, is just a distraction. I want to look at legacy neighborhoods as the keepers of something, right? They're keeping not just reconciliation and repatriation of what was stolen, but they're also making sure and ensuring that our children don't have to fight this same fight that we're fighting from 1964.
To answer your question, no, I do not think that reporting was fair. When you have a community that has been the victim of redlining and significant underinvestment, I think it's a fair question to ask if their wastewater treatment systems can handle missing middle. You have a neighborhood like Shiloh that's a historic community. Does it need a historic overlay? I think it's a fair question for folks to ask. NIMBYism, there's NIMBYism all over the city, and I think to put it on legacy neighborhoods is unfair. Urban renewal robbed black families of the ability to maintain build generational wealth. That's why one of the reparations report's recommendations is to move a campaign to move people from public housing into home ownership so they can, again, build that generational wealth. So, no, I did not think that coverage was fair.
I think it's a real shame that when we talk about our city's development, it has been so colored by race. We all know when we speak about legacy neighborhoods, we're talking about African American neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, however you want to say it. But when we talk about missing middle housing, it's about increasing the supply of housing. And housing, like any other commodity, is regulated by supply and demand. Asheville has more demand than it has supply. Missing middle strategies are the easiest way for us to increase supply while protecting the fabric of our neighborhoods. Missing middle housing is the easiest way for mom and pops to become landlords, get a little bit more income. It's the easiest way for someone with a little bit more resources of land or of property to get some increased income and resources in their life. So I think it's a shame that we have been so stalled in this process, and that I think we need to find compromise where we can implement the kind of zoning reforms that we need, along with the programs that protect and empower people to take advantage of Asheville's growth. We need programs that help lower the barrier of entry for existing Asheville residents to do that kind of small developments, whether that's pre-designs for ADUs, whether that's legal help to make sure you can find out where your property lines are and what you need to go through in order to add a granny flat. But to stop everything and not move forward with zoning reform, we all pay the cost of that. Your property taxes go up, rents go up. We need to grow our city,
Okay.
and that's my take on it.
Keep your mic, because I have a follow-up for you and one for you, Shonda. At the beginning of this, when we did our yes or no's, you said that you agreed that the black community has some shared interest. And this is a black town hall. And based on your answers, my question to you is, what does your support for the black community look like? From a campaign perspective, from your core values. Because the way you're answering, I think a lot of people in this room will want to know, if we're here from the entire community, which we are, but tonight we focus on the black community, which we are, what does your support for the black community look like?
So, I'm not from Asheville. I'm not going to try to fake that. But I've lived in a lot of different cities. I've lived all over the U.S. and I've lived abroad quite a lot. And I've lived in a lot of majority-minority cities. And I think that the best thing that we can do for that African American and the black community here is to increase our interaction amongst different socioeconomical levels, different racial backgrounds. And it's only through interacting and getting to know one another and seeing people not by the color of their skin, but by the quality of their character, that we empathize with one another and we make decisions together. Too much of the rhetoric right now pits us against one another. And that's how the people at the top stay at the top.
Sure. Thank you. And then when you pass the mic on to Shonda. When you spoke about this most recent answer, you said that you thought that there should be different funding for legacy neighborhoods. What kind of funding would you propose if you were on city council?
So additional funding.
Yes.
So when the legacy neighborhoods are going out, I spoke with some of the members of one of the legacy neighborhoods, and they were just saying that they didn't have the funding to go out and get all the neighbors to come in and do different events and have different activities going on for the neighborhoods and get what they need. So the city should be helping them with pushing that. So I just meant additional funding. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Additional to support whatever that particular neighborhood is looking to do.
Yes, and I saw a lot of head shaking during some of this back and forth. So if anyone on stage would like to respond to one of the other candidates' most recent answer, you're welcome to grab the mic. No? We move on? Okay.
1 second.
Go ahead, David.
I just feel like the housing question I feel like the city was the arsonist and now is coming and pretending to be the firefighter. And maybe even blaming someone else for the fire. That, as the only person who's built housing in Asheville, I can tell you how difficult it is and how many obstacles the city puts in front of you to build housing, especially in these corridors like Merriman Avenue, Patton Avenue, Hendersonville Road, you know, and you get, or Charlotte Street, where the whole neighborhood comes and fights against it. And so we don't have housing, and then all of a sudden the city is now saying, oh, well, we need housing, who can we blame? That's how I look at it. I think the city has to change their overall perspective on how we're going to bring housing. They should definitely not be blaming the community that has nothing to do with the problem. And I think there are things that, and that's why I'm running, because I have experience in housing and I want to bring that message to city council.
Anyone else want to respond? Approval? Yes.
Say one thing. You know, when we're sitting here, and I'm a white guy sitting here,
You don't say.
right? I'm beautiful. But I'm an old white guy. I might be gay, but I'm still an old white guy. And it's really easy to say it's really easy to say that like we're not that people are pitting us against each other. That's an easy out. But through saying that what you're not doing is the work and giving people who have been marginalized space at a table to be heard and to be seen. What you're doing is you're saying the result of something that hasn't happened. That's all I'm going to say.
Anyone else? No? My next question? All right, well, actually, we're going to start with you, Ms. Leslie. So, many Black residents have expressed that Asheville's progressive identity does not always translate into measurable improvements in their day-to-day lives. Some describe the city's liberal reputation as performative rather than transformative. Do you think that criticism is fair? Why or why not?
Yes.
Why?
So one thing I've noticed since I returned, because I was in a larger city that is technically viewed, while to the left, perhaps less progressive as Asheville. And generally speaking, what I find is Black people in Asheville tend not to be as progressive as white progressives, generally. Also what I find is we're very performative. The example going back to the housing article proves just that. You have 4 people who refuse to vote against something because they don't want to look racist. I find that in my hometown, we are at a place where it is worse to be called racist than to be racist. I have seen it time and time again in my service on council. And you've seen it too. That's the long and short of it. I don't think when reparations was voted on in the affirmative, I don't think the majority of the people really wanted it. I think they voted yes, but meant no. And here we are.
You pass it to Bobby, please. Oh, everyone's going to answer this question. I just wanted to start in the middle. No, Bobby. Bobby, it's your turn. How do you respond to the question that a lot of people see Asheville as a performative, progressive city, but the everyday lives of Black folks is not getting better? And do you think that's fair criticism?
Yes, for the last 8 years, we've seen it. I like to use the word whitewashed, because you kind of get used to it. The building, that's why I mentioned the block earlier. This to me is a legacy community. Came here every weekend, you know, just about growing up, along with the other communities that I lived in. And it just seemed like you're priced out, phased out. I live on Stoner Road, the Stoner Road community over here in Oakley, and where my mom and their family have $100,000 houses, now we have $500,000 houses. So when the taxes go up, my mom that's on her income retired, well, she feels that cost. Well, now she's got another $800 this year to put towards the taxes to pay Asheville that's not paying us. So, yeah, I live it every day. Where we're just getting weeded out and nobody's really thinking about it. Are we 7% of Asheville? We're not 24%. So I'd like to just see us grow and try to bring something here to help keep from getting phased out where we can afford homes, where people that have, you know, Section 8 vouchers can get paid on the mortgage instead of just paying the rent. To come up out of these situations and better paying jobs, we need to bring industrial and textile here so people can have those jobs. A bus route out to Fletcher Airport Road, so the people here in Livingston can get a job out at Meritor and make $20-25 an hour, you know, to support their family and come up out of these situations. But yeah, the city's not held us back long enough, really, personally.
Thank you.
I'm so interested in hearing what you were just saying. You'll repeat the question for me?
Do you agree, or what is your response to the prompt that a lot of Black Asheville residents feel that Asheville is performative in its progressive values and the everyday lives of Black folks in the city is not getting better? Do you think that's fair criticism? Why or why not?
There obviously has been some effort that I've seen since I've been in this area to acknowledge the BIPOC community, if I'm saying that correctly. I know that one time I recently applied for a grant for helping at-risk kids, and we were able to work collaboratively with Peak Academy. And through that collaboration, I actually learned of the value that they provide the children, the youth. All youth is what we really should be looking at to support. All youth in transition. Youth go through all types of transition, and sometimes it's a cultural transition, sometimes it's a physical body transition, or some other transition about being neglected and having to go through the court system. I support youth in transition. I'm going to pass it on.
Okay, thank you.
I would say yes to that assumption, or not even the assumption, but yes to the question. And when I moved out here in 1997, my first apartment was in Klondike. I was a teenager. That was my first experience of understanding affordable housing. But then when I would fly back to New York, because I'm originally from Brooklyn, coming back to Asheville, I wouldn't even see any Black faces in the airport. Fast forward 30 plus years later, still no Black people in the airport. We had a reparations process. You can't even tell if the reparations process took place here in Asheville. So it is real to understand that while Asheville may be progressive, there's hidden undertones of racism that stops and blocks people. Just the last question, legacy neighborhoods are taken away with the middle housing or affordable housing. That right there is a hidden undertone of racism and a form of economic control. So for me, I just want to see a city where city council isn't divided on efforts. I want to see a city where our community is being leaned on and not exacerbated or being profiled or pulled out or extracted. I feel like Asheville right now has the potential to usher into a millennium where there's new models that we have not faced yet that can be implemented. So when I look at what racism feels like, Asheville was the first place I felt it, and it was horrible.
That's well said. I would just add that, yeah, I think, I've said this to folks, I think this city council is the toughest job on the ballot. This is where a lot of the rubber meets the road. And as a progressive person, you have to live in this space with conflicting results, right, based on what you do. I'll give you an example. So on the county commission, folks are pushing, we need to raise property taxes so we can fund the schools, right? The same folks that are out campaigning for that refuse to see the impact of folks in legacy neighborhoods who have seen their property tax rate jump at a much higher percentage than other folks in the city, right? So we have to balance these conflicting progressive ideals, and we have to be honest about, you know, what happens when we make one decision, who's the winner and the loser here. Black Asheville has brought is such a beautiful piece of our history and such a massive part of what has made Asheville, and we're losing that. We're losing that population, and it's sad and it's huge concern to me. But yeah, I feel I don't want to become Boulder, Colorado, right? Like we're progressive Southerners. We need to unite across race, fusionist politics that connect us on working class values, fighting for working class people.
I think 100% that a lot of the progressivism on council is performative. But the issue, I think, is that a lot of people do have good intentions and they don't follow through on things. So I'll just talk about the tree ordinance. People fought to get a fee in lieu tree program. So if a developer needs to cut down a tree, instead of planting a new one, they're gonna pay some money in there. And we have $500,000 sitting in the fee and lieu fund. But when they wrote that ordinance, they didn't write anything about how will we spend that money. And so we have an urban forester that we're paying money for his job, and he can't spend any of that money. And so we do more studies and studies. We need proactive leadership. We need people that think the whole process through, so that we don't have money sitting in funds. And I think you all know that there's a lot of money sitting in a fund with no way to use it that would directly affect people in this room. And so we need to think things all the way through, make sure that they're actionable, and that we have good leadership to follow through on effective implementation of programs.
Now we have to pass the mic to David. Actually, we can start with Jeffrey, and then we'll make its way to David.
Can we refresh the question again?
Yes. Many Black residents in Asheville. Don't spill your water, baby.
Sorry, I'm excited.
That's a historic study.
I was like, let me talk.
Many Black residents have expressed that Asheville's progressive identity does not always translate into measurable improvements in their day-to-day lives. Then they find that Asheville's liberal reputation is performative rather than transformative.
Yeah, and I think there's a really easy way to measure that, and if we look at it in money, right? So as I was just saying earlier for the Economy Helene Recovery Boards, who were the two organizations partially funded? Eagle Street and Arts ABL. So there we are. There's a moment right there where that's obviously performative. Like, we have an opportunity to make change, and we're not doing it. It's taken years now for anti-risk displacement to come through. Again, those are promises that are just not coming through fast enough. So I would say that yes, that it is performative, and I hope that the council that comes out from this process at the end of the year is somebody that can actually hold values and stay with them.
Thank you.
Am I passing to you?
Yes, thank you. Well said. A friend and I talk a lot about moving past beliefs to values, because we can believe in things and that's performative. I get to say I believe in education, and maybe I'll go march about it, or I'll go sign a petition. When I value education, I'm going to do my absolute darndest to ensure that all children have access to high quality education. And that means showing up, understanding how kids learn how to read. I'm going to speak from literacy, possibly becoming a tutor, or resourcing organizations and families that are supporting children in learning how to read. That's a specific example. I know based on the last State of Black Asheville report, as well as the Cease the Harm audit and other studies, right, that our city has done to show us again and again how the Black community is impacted. And in Asheville specifically, the average median income for a white household is over $75,000, and the average median income for a Black household is around $26,000. If we aren't performing, that wouldn't exist, right? If we really cared about the things that we're out marching about and petitioning about, the folks that we see, I feel like that gap would definitely not be that wide. Those are a few examples of why I do think that we can move past beliefs and performance to values and do the thing.
So I agree. I do think we are very performative. I can speak to our children as well. Being on the school board for almost 8 years, I definitely saw plenty of performances. Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County has had the highest achievement gap in decade after decade. Nobody's done anything. Peak Academy starts a school, starts to actually make progress with students, and it's the front page of the paper. They're doing the wrong thing. Nobody talks about Asheville City School and the declining number of African American students, and how we have one black student on a whole grade level. You can't even get the testing data because we don't have black kids on grade levels or in schools. We have white schools in Asheville. Nobody says a word. Nobody's fighting for anything. The fund, if we're going to transfer funds, maybe that's what we should be basing it on, who's doing the work. And then you can take the race out of it. If the school is doing the work and serving the children all the children the way that they should, because no one said that white children can't attend Peak Academy. Peak Academy hasn't said that. So if they're doing the work, then maybe we should be taking the money from some of these schools who aren't doing the work for all students, and we should be transferring those funds to schools like Peak Academy and some of these other programs who are putting in the work to make sure that all children are successful. So yes, Asheville is very performative.
David?
I agree that we have too much performance as opposed to action, and I'd like to give 3 examples. The first one is related to our budget, and that's that we've increased our spending by $71 million on an annual basis in the last 5 years. And while the city says they want to protect our marginalized communities, the taxes are going to increase and it's going to affect the marginalized communities the most. Number 2 is the living wage that we talked about. The cost to give everyone a living wage. When they increased people's salaries, the people at the top got the most money. But they talk about paying a living wage, which wouldn't have cost that much. And third, the city talks about wanting to improve our economy, but a lot of the contracts they give out to people from out of town. And so those are just 3 examples, some of which may affect the Black community more than others. I'd like to listen more about the specific ones that affect the Black community the most in Asheville.
I hand the mic to Antoinette because I have 2 follow-ups, one for you and then one for Tiffany. So as someone who sits on city council right now,
Yes.
and who is saying that a lot of Asheville is performative, I'm curious how you feel people in your position, politicians, are navigating performance. Because right, when you vote, it's on camera, your meetings are on camera, and then you have to vote, and then maybe people don't always read. So as someone who has sat in those seats, what has that meant for you? What is the navigation of performance to build a coalition versus trying to affect change?
So it's actually been one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. And I say that as someone who's had cancer not once, not twice, 3 times, and buried 2 parents. It is very interesting because you start to learn that people will move differently when the camera's on than when it is off. So I make a point of taking advantage of when the camera is on. At times, though, that can be resentment. So if you're voting for something because you believe white progressives want you to vote that way for Black people, instead of because you really care about Black people, you start to seethe. And then you get articles like the one we were talking about before. So again, thank you so much, Shonda, for mentioning Peak Academy. I sit on that board. I take it very seriously. Keep in mind, you get to vote for 3 people. Vote in your best interest. If 2 of those 3 people have consistently shown up for you, vote for them. Anyone else who has not shown up for you, don't vote for them. Because council is not about one person. It is about building a coalition. Be smart. We are smarter than they think we are. You need 4 people to get anything done. Count to 4.
And then to Tiffany. You, in your answer, Tiffany, yes, so follow up, I'm gonna do my last round of questions, but in your answer, you spoke a lot about collaboration. I'm curious if you were to get on city council, what does a collaborative city look like to you? Like, what does it mean for city council to not be in disagreement with community? What does it mean for community to not be fighting, somewhat of a race war, right? What does that look like to you?
That is a great question. So the first thing that came to my mind was the piece of the history, right, of America, which has a hand at play here of collaborations. And then I also think about trust, mistrust, and distrust. So in order to collaborate successfully, first is about relationship building. Understanding that, yes, Asheville is a unique city, but there's other cities that are doing successful things that Asheville can implement here as well. But without bringing the right people to the table, it's not going to work. So the first thing I want to see is that we actually listen to our community, we actually respond to our community, and then we reach out and we go to where our community is. The other piece is also understanding, and I appreciate what Vice Mayor said around we need 4 votes. So it's like understanding who my colleagues are that is on the city council and how we can work together. Just as sitting on the Reparations Commission and understanding the hard work that it took and the years, and we still are at a place where it feels stagnated or stalemate, It's not gonna happen overnight. Collaborations is not gonna be built in a day, and I understand that. But I'm here to play the long game. So it's about the commitment to this economic planning and understand that we are, and when I say we, I mean Black people here in Asheville, we are generations behind. So what does that look like for all of us to truly work together? Well, first, it just matters as far as being fully transparent and not taking no for an answer, because I know we can work together. You just gotta find that common ground.
Thank you. You can give the mic to Drew. He's gonna lead off our last round of questions before we get to audience questions. So, I know I didn't let y'all do a stump speech, and I'm sorry, but this is your chance at a little bit of a stump speech. What is one thing that is central to your campaign or to your belief system that you will fight for, even if it means you're gonna lose this race?
I feel like I've been having those fights for a long time, doing advocacy for the past 20 years. Something I'm willing to fight for. I mean, I've been talking a lot about housing. I think if you just look at the numbers, we have about 3,000 folks that need a rental. We have even more than that that are looking for housing that's actually affordable. You know, as supply drops, it gets even more cutthroat, and it gets harder and harder to find a place, and only the folks who can afford to buy here. I think we do need to look at neighborhood context and where we build and what we build. But we have a housing affordability crisis, and it's shaking the city right now. So I'm banging the drum on that. It's part of the reason why I'm running.
Tiffany?
So my 3 pillars are the environment, mental health, and youth. So for years, since 2010, I remember the conversation around a citywide youth plan. Well, I want to see that really happen. I want to actually see our stakeholders who's working with our young adults. I want to see our city combine with our families to really create a hub and a space where the city holds it and we all work together to have a plan that fills in the gaps for our young folks. So youth violence has increased, and we realize that the increase comes from young people not having anything to do. So I want to implement a citywide youth plan that has some teeth, has a backbone, and has some accountability that trickles down from the city through city staff and departments, and then goes to community, because our future is our youth, and if we're not investing in that, what are we expecting for tomorrow?
Good, Kyle.
Tomorrow could be kinder if we do something today. You know, youth in transition. I say that because all youth going through all the things that youth go through are in transition. And I have ready for one of the city commissioners that's currently serving a youth proclamation that will support all youth in transition. Two-Spirit, let's talk about that first. That we sit on that land that Two-Spirit comes from. We should acknowledge that before we acknowledge anything. We must support youth in transition. Give them the space, the safe space to be in, to feel comfortable in. Asheville being a little weird brought me here. I'm a little weird, maybe a lot. But sometimes youth that are in transition feel weird because they might not fit in. In Asheville, they can fit in. You're holding for me?
Yes, so, Bob, give them that.
I was in the military, so I know how to do
Yeah.
that.
Pass the mic.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you. Bobby, same question to you. What is one pillar of your campaign that you're willing to fight for, even if it means you're going to lose this race?
Yes, I'm not going to.
Pretty much the reparations theory in Black Asheville. Like I say, I'm Black too. I have to live in the city, born and raised right here in Biltmore, and I feel it just as much as everybody else, being left out, you know, not being able to go somewheres and, you know, see people of your own kind. No nightlife, no restaurants, no soul food, no hangout spots, nowhere for you to go and release that stress all day that you've been built up and want to talk to your own peers. So that's something that one of my main things besides the juveniles here, the young people, I have a nonprofit, A&B High School Fishing, where we get these kids out and we take them fishing, because my belief is I don't want to see no more basketball and football and us tossing that stuff around. Let's be marine biologists, let's be bear biologists, let's be game wardens. You can still make good money. We just have to introduce it to the youth here. Get them out of the inner city and say, hey, we have a Lake Junior, let's go fishing. There's plenty of other activities we can introduce. We just got to get out of our own way and let it open up and show, hey, look, we can build more here in Asheville than what we already have.
Thank you. Ms. Mosley?
Thank you for this question, because I started smiling when I heard it, oddly enough. I'm very hopeful. I've been running and working on development without displacement since I joined council. I grew up right up the street up here in East End. Used to walk up here when I was 8 years old with my dog Prince, and I would go over here to Miss Rowland to get my hair done, and then I would see Mr. A.C. Mitchell talking to my great-granddaddy right out here on the street, and he would give me money to go take to my parents because they had placed me in a private school, and neighbors from all over the city would come and literally bring my parents $1 or $2. And then shortly after the storm, I just remember the spark and the community. And the places that had the greatest sense of community were the legacy neighborhoods. So if you could come, if your grandparents could come and give me $1 to go to school, the least I could do is to work for you for anti-displacement, stability, because these neighborhoods are the foundation of our city. So that's what I'm working for every day. And when you do that, people come after you, but they wouldn't come after you if you didn't have a thing.
Thank you. And I got to know, a point of clarification, legacy neighborhoods are not just black.
They're not.
There are Hispanic and white legacy neighborhoods in the city. So,
Including LA.
So when I think about the kind of the most important value, it's the result of something. So, and if we do something right, so I'm going to put it backwards. The result being that this would give young people in Asheville the chance not to just imagine a future here, but to build a life worth staying for or coming back to here. And that takes three things: deeply affordable and workforce housing. And we do that through identifying land use, city-owned property, the exploration of nonprofit developer partnerships, or investigating if the city was to build this housing themselves and what that looks like. The second thing we need to invest the CDJBDR money in a way that actually builds back into the community, brings money into our community, doesn't put it out. $1 turns into $20. So we're investing in community projects that will have a lasting impression. When I was in New Orleans, I was a part of a group selected to go there, and what we did is we saw firsthand the result of that work. And we went to, for example, in the Bywater, the healing center that had been built 20 years ago for that community, and it's still standing today. It was a community-led project, and that's why it's still standing there. So that's $1 well spent. And then keeping our small businesses strong, our creative economy strong, because that is also something that helps build the character of our city. And if we can get those three things right, we give young people a chance.
thank you. Jess?
Thank you. The thing that really roots me in the work that I do, from growing up here in Asheville, but now working with school partners, early childhood partners, out-of-school time programs, many of whom are actually on the stage here today, is in the parable of the sower at the end. Octavia Butler wrote, "A community's first responsibility is to its children." A community's first responsibility is to its children. And that roots me because it doesn't help me align priorities. It indicates to me that when we take care of our children, all the rest comes along. When we make sure 1 out of 6 children in Asheville isn't living in poverty, and we know the poverty line's artificial and it's many, many more kids than that. But when we work on that, then we actually start to fight and end food apartheid. We start building deeply affordable and workforce housing. We make sure that families, all families, have access to economic mobility and jobs that allow them to live purposeful, meaningful lives and raise your kids. So they do want to stay here, right? Or come back here, or go and build communities wherever they end up. So that is the value, that a community's first responsibility is to its children. That's what I get to do at Read to Succeed, along with some of the boards that I'm a part of and the different volunteer work that I am in. And I deeply believe in reparations and redistribution of wealth, and that will be something that I bring to council as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just continue with the youth. Everything I do is for the, no, everything is for the children, and I, together, my husband and I have 7 children, and I think I told you before that most of them no longer live here, and they don't want to come back here. They can't afford to. My daughter just graduated from North Carolina A&T, and she wants to be a teacher. She can't afford to live in Asheville unless she comes back to live with me. I love her, but I want her to, yeah. I want her to be an adult and be able to thrive on her own without coming home and living with me. I want her to have a place to go and enjoy herself in community, not have to drive to Greenville or Charlotte just to go out and have fun with her friends. But the children that I work with every day, I often tell people that we owe it to them to make sure that, I always say that I want to make sure the children I serve now don't become my future residents because I work for the Housing Authority. And I think it's our responsibility to give them every opportunity. We're living in a community now where people are coming in and taking more of those opportunities away, and people don't see those things happening because of the children that is actually the kids that need the most opportunity, exposure, and experience. If you look at the budgets will tell you where people's priorities are. So, and a lot of times it's not our children and it's not our families who are the most underserved. So we have to do a better job of that. For the families that are living in public housing, they deserve safe, affordable, quality housing just like the next person. So it's our responsibility to do that. And to speak on what Bobby was saying.
So my platform is infrastructure, housing, safety, and economy. But I want to talk about answering the question, which is part of my platform is housing. One of the things that might get votes against me is I want to continue to protect the legacy neighborhoods and allow them to determine any zoning changes that would occur there. I've already spoken publicly at City Council about that. And last week I met Ms. Dixon at the Eddington Center. And she complained to me about a zoning change that someone's trying to force through in her neighborhood. And she's been fighting for her neighborhood for a long time. And I agreed on the 23rd that I'm going to go to the Board of Adjustment and speak on her behalf to try to prevent that zoning change from happening, which will be a public event. So that is something that's important to me. I will continue to talk about this publicly, as I will next week on the 23rd. I encourage anybody who wants to speak on behalf of Ms. Dixon and to stop the zoning change in Shiloh to come at 8:30 a.m. to the Board of Adjustments on the 23rd. Thank you.
So we're going to go to audience questions, but I'm so sorry, Scott. Was at the end. That's my fault. Take an extra 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay.
Maybe 8.
I wouldn't be running if it weren't for Hurricane Helene. I went to school in New Orleans. I spent 3 years down there. And that was right after Katrina. We're now 20 years out from Katrina. Just last year, some of the final federal money was spent down there. We can all look at that experience and understand how uneven it was, how communities that were left out because they didn't have proper representation or because things were promised and never delivered, they're not there anymore. Those people are not New Orleanians anymore, and some of them aren't with us. So my experience from down there is why I want to run to make sure we don't mess it up here. We need to get it right the very first time, and we need to make sure that it's equitable and that nobody gets left behind as we rebuild, and we need to make sure that what we do rebuild is better than it was before and more resilient so that when the next hurricane comes, it's not as it's better for us. We need to have a better situation. If you go down to the Riverlink building and you look at, they have 2 water lines on that building, the 1916 flood and then the 2024 flood of Helene. The 2024 flood is about a foot higher than the 1916 flood. but there were 10 more inches of water that fell in 1916. If we don't get our development right, if we don't have stormwater protections, the next flood will be even higher. So that's why I'm running, and I want to be up here without it. So.
Okay, so, thank you. So it's time for audience questions, but do y'all need a potty break? You need a break? Yeah, okay, so we're gonna take 3 minutes, run a bathroom, we'll come back. Jeffrey, and answer that. No.
Oh, sorry.
Y'all can, so I'm not gonna make you all answer these questions, but as I ask the question, if you would like to answer the question, raise your hand, and one of your friends will pass you the mic. Where is the mic right now? Scott's got the mic, so I asked the mic from Scott. So, first question. What do you think the city's role is in addressing food deserts, particularly those that were created and exacerbated by deadlines?
Community gardens, remove the hustle and bustle from Eagles, and also ensure that a lot of unused space can actually be a grocery store, and it's not just something you access, but it's something that you're a part of too.
Are you going, just whoever wants?
Yeah, whoever wants to answer.
I just have something real quick, because what this gets down to, and I'm really happy to see that City Council is starting to move on this, it's the derelict buildings and unused building tax, which needs to be explored further, because the only way you can stop somebody who has the money to be a monopoly in our community is to make them pay. And make them pay for actually taking a building that could serve our community and holding it hostage. So make them pay. Simple.
Amen.
Can I answer? Okay. I have the honor of getting to do a lot of really great work with Southside Community Farm, which I've learned a lot about food apartheid, why we call it that, not necessarily naturally occurring thing like a desert, because it's very intentional who has access to food and who doesn't. And so I think community gardens that can also supplant and complement resilience hubs, which become part of our climate resilience model to prepare for the next disaster. Teaching kids, like Tiffany was talking about, and working with partners like Southside Community Farm that work with Peak Academy and Reach to Succeed throughout the school year and during the summer to teach kids about food sovereignty, how to grow things that they can eat, how to cook the things that they love, and how to feed the people that are around them. And I think those things are really powerful as we talk about making sure that we have access to food, and also thinking about the millions and millions and millions of dollars that go to food banks and food pantries, and thinking about public-private partnerships that help us rethink packing food boxes and getting them out and packing food boxes, and instead building these spaces for people to have ownership over what they grow and what they eat.
Anyone else want to answer?
I have 2 points to make. One is, it's funny that Drew brought up the county's project on Cox, because I own the property next door. As many people in there, they know I try to build the small suites there, but I can't because the county's doing their project. I actually approached the county to combine our properties to put a grocery store there. I called all the grocery stores. Publix was interested, but the county didn't want to combine our properties to put a grocery store there. And so I think the city and the county need to be more open about using their properties. The second thing is we need to be more flexible with our zoning. Why is it that Montfort can have I forget this name of the sandwich shop and the Jamaican food restaurant in town? I think for many neighborhoods, it might be like a bodega or something. With the permission of the neighborhood, there should be some flexibility in zoning to allow a small shop that can sell things in the neighborhood. It could be food, and it doesn't have to be a huge grocery store. And I think our zoning is inflexible, but yet a place like Montfort has a couple of restaurants in the neighborhood that seem to be quite popular. Why can't we allow that in other neighborhoods so that people can walk to get something to eat rather than get in a car?
Right, and then Scott, and then we're going to go to the next question. Hand it to Scott, please. Don't have to work together.
Part of the reason we have food deserts is because convenience stores are not grocery stores. They are quick, grab and go, they have the highest markups. Grocery stores across the country are on a super low margin model, and so they conglomerate and they get as big as possible, and they place themselves very intelligently based on catchment area. And that's why they don't diversify, and we don't have grocery stores on every corner. So convenience stores are not the answer to food deserts. I'm not even sure that farmers markets are the answer to it, but it allows for a flexible retail space. It allows for people with small businesses to grow them, and it allows the flexibility for the farmers market to meet the exact needs of each individual neighborhood, whatever they need.
Thank you. Scott, hand the mic to Bobby. We're just gonna start from you, Bobby, just because. So, the next question from the audience is, what are some, I just wanted to look at my camera.
Repeat the last part of that again.
What are some of the things that the city can do to improve opportunities for youth to stay and succeed in Asheville?
Invest in education, Asheville High, more buses so these kids can get back and forth to school, more teachers of their peers, somebody that looks like them so they can understand a little bit better. So when you speak to them, they know, I understand you. Just trying to get the youth to come out and participate in a lot of this that we have going on. The city could spend more money, building programs that, support the Reed Center, the Grant Center. They don't spend enough money in these neighborhoods. They don't put enough focus on these neighborhoods for the children to have the education to come out here and make a good living. To understand the value of a dollar, to pay the taxes that we pay here. So I think they could, this next round of city council people, I think will make that change, have a positive outlook on that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to answer this question? Go ahead.
So I've always been a big proponent of education. My mother was an educator. She taught for over 30 years in the Asheville City school system. Very early on when I joined council, one of the things that I had the pleasure to do very early on was to fund pods. I'm very glad about that opportunity. We also, and this was a point of contention, when I tell you what we did, you're gonna go, really, was this a point of contention? I was also very proud to give over $500,000 to Peak Academy. And we fought hard because some other people preferred to do $600-something thousand on a bathroom instead. So those are the odds that we are facing. I'm proud to now be on the Peak board. I'm proud to constantly work with the Director of Parks and Recreation, D. Tyrell McGirt. Please avail yourselves and your children of some of the great programming we have at Asheville Parks and Recreation. Mr. Tyrell does an excellent job. Every year we fund initiatives through strategic partnership grants that will help our children succeed because, as Jess said, start with your children and things work out. And your elders, but start with your children.
Okay, Kyle, and then
in order to keep our children, to allow our youth to grow and succeed and to want to come back to Asheville should they go away from for college or what have you. In other words, we should provide them an opportunity, obtainable opportunity to encourage them just to actually stay in Asheville, give them that reason to stay, give them that reason to come back. And while the teacher salary might not be what your daughter wants it to be, maybe she does need to live in a small house in your backyard if you have a space for middle housing, I don't know, or a grandmother's suite to take care of your daughter or grandchildren or what have you. But having the opportunity for them to obtain is something that just seems to go far with me. Giving them that, and I meant to start off with this, but the city proclamation is important to show the youth, all youth, in transition toward adulthood, that they have an opportunity here in Asheville.
Again, as I mentioned before, one of my pillars is our youth and looking at a citywide youth plan implementation. Years ago, this was about 13 years ago, I went to UNCA and I was wondering, why is there no JD program out here? So if you're interested in being a lawyer, why do you have to go to Boone, App State, or even further? And they said because there was not enough interest. So when we talk about how do we have things for children or young people to keep them here and make them want to stay, well, first of all, offer them the education that can help them thrive. We should be spitting out engineers, lawyers, principals, and even teachers. I mean, and again, we have great systems set in place, educational systems, but they are not tailored to the future of how we want and need our young people to begin to be great global thinkers. So I think we need to start filling in some of these gaps with our amazing Parks and Rec that was mentioned, but also we depend heavily on our community-based organizations that are barely funded. So if we combine all of that and implement it in a strategic way that's multi-layered, we will begin to see young people come back to Asheville. But again, it's not just we have the answers here, it's also consulting with the experts, which is you.
I just want to say that the early years of a child's life are the most critical, and so early childhood education is critical. It's a growing crisis. Child care and early childhood education is a growing crisis. Governor Hunt created Head Start, the legislature dismantled it, and now we're back in society where we're looking at Minnesota and New Mexico and other places that are actually doing this. Last year, even though we had a really difficult budget season at the county, we looked at our early childhood development grants and we said, we're not going to reduce those. Those are too critical. And kudos goes to Martin and Al on the county commission because they really championed that. So I think that early childhood education piece is really important.
Anyone want to add to this before we move on?
Three things for people graduating and moving on that age. We need to work more with our local universities and our community colleges, and that means service learning. That means getting the students to come out and help us do things, and so they can get connections with the community, they can get connections with employers, so they can stay. The other is jobs training with our community colleges. People are paying to learn how to do jobs. They should be learning and doing things for our community while they're doing that. And then the third thing that I want to put out there to increase affordability for our youngest people is we need to expand the coverage of our transit system, and it's very difficult to do that with buses, but on-demand micro-transit is one of the best ways that we can do that. It's basically an Uber bus that's going to pick you up and take you door to door, and that will help keep some of that money from going to Silicon Valley, but it'll affect people directly because if you don't need a car, that's $10,000 a year that you don't need to spend.
Jeffrey, and then our final audience question.
Thanks. So as a product of I'm a latchkey kid. So, I raised my sister and myself because my parents had to work. And so funding community organizations is a really important thing. It was super important to me as a kid. It's something that I'm really, really supportive of. And not just, I was thrust into sports programs. We can guess how that went. So also the importance of diversifying opportunities as well. And Asheville has a fair amount of them, but they're underfunded. So we need to make sure that when we have opportunities for economic stability and long-term investment, that they're going into the right places, that create enough opportunities that cast a wider net for folks that maybe not be the out-of-the-box person that is in existence. Those are programs that made me really successful as an adult, and I'm really proud of them. And then additionally, when I was talking earlier about could the city invest in having its own developer and contractor to make affordable housing actually realized? So one thing we did where I grew up is our local college actually worked with our city on building housing. So it helped make it more cost effective, and then the kids going through that program actually learned those direct skills in theory and practice, in practice rather than in theory. I have more I can say, but I'll leave it at that.
You want to go first? You go first. So I would be willing to support a social district with requisite community engagement. Perhaps that question is coming up because there was a consideration for just that type of measure that came before council a couple of months ago, but it came before council without any community engagement. And there were media reports that the block was going to have its own social district. Guess who didn't get to weigh in on that? The block. So before I discuss supporting or not supporting, I think what works in one part of town may not work in the other part of town. And I think when you are a resident, when you are a taxpayer, your voice needs to be heard before I voice something on you.
Anyone else?
So, yeah, go for it. Yeah, no, go for it.
Jeffrey and then Scott.
You know, don't let Jessica.
Okay, yes, ladies first, that helps a lot, thank you. A lot of times when I hear about projects that are being positioned or proposed, I ask, what is the goal? What is the goal of having a social district? So if someone said, we support that, say, why would our city want that? Is that what our businesses are asking for? Is this what's going to drive more engagement and economic activation? Like, is it really going to show that? Do we have data to back that up? If I sit on council, part of that role, I believe, in understanding and making thoughtful decisions is talking to people who are directly affected, asking where the data shows this, where this works or doesn't work, and understanding overall how does this serve our city and move Asheville forward as a place that provides jobs, housing, healthcare, and lets people live, I'm going to say it again, purposeful, meaningful lives that bring them and their families joy. That's where I would start. I'm sorry, I'm going to go.
I'm gonna go next.
So sorry.
Sorry. So about social districts. So again, as a community advocator and organizer, I think it always starts with the community first and ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table to understand what's happening, what the ask is, and what the result will be. Inside of that, the city of Asheville has historically had events where there are social district components to it, and the vendors at those, it ends up, my understanding of it is that that actually funds the city. So instead of being able to be like, for example, if you owned Antidote or The Wedge or something like that, you weren't able to participate in a same way that would kind of help your business grow. So I think the first thing is to make sure that it's actually to support our local businesses, make sure that the community is in agreement with what the plans are, and that the result is going to have a lot of our businesses, and as the only person sitting on the stage that has a brick and mortar business, we are suffering and we are looking for opportunities. So we need to work with our neighborhoods to find those. Like activations, like when we created RadFest, that first RadFest right after the hurricane, over 10,000 people came through and over $1 million was spent in the district. And that was literally the lifeline that saved 90% of our district from closing during our highest peak of economic performance that didn't come through because of the hurricane. So we have found opportunities, but that was built in through our district, these kinds of events. And they were things that our district wanted. So, for our businesses, these have been really essential and a part of the lifeblood of being able to remain a part of the character and telling the stories of our city.
We have one more response because I want y'all to have closing statements.
So I'm gonna pretty much go along with what Antoinette said, and I would wanna hear from the neighbors and the business owners in terms of the areas that they were planning to have the social districts. But I definitely would wanna hear from the homeowners and the people that reside in that area first, because a lot of times when you own a business there, you're not laying your head there, and we need to understand how it impacts the people that have to live there. And then do we have adequate policing to be able to manage all of the social activity that's going on? So I definitely would want to hear, since we do have different opinions from different neighbors.
Okay. I want to respect everyone's. Would you, Kyle? One more, but I want you to make time.
Can I just add something to that?
Nope.
No. Give me the mic.
Sorry, no.
No.
So when the city council was approaching this issue recently, they also had another issue with something about some 35, 30, 50 noise levels. Yeah, there was people that made comments there that came from the heart of the areas that would be affected. Who's going to clean up the urine? Who's going to clean up the paper cups or the beer cups that go down the way? Who's going to take care of the confusion that goes along with maybe continuing your efforts rather than wrapping up your party and go, getting on back to your sanctuary, your home, your affordable housing that you were able to obtain? It just didn't come across right. There was division on the council. It didn't look good. But I see how it was managed. And it makes me wonder how it didn't get better, how it did not come to the council better than it did, and how it did not seem to, or it seemed to bring up the opportunity for a discussion that needed to be had. And from that perspective, it should land at the council's dais better than it did.
Okay, so let's give it to Scott, and then we'll let you guys do a quick closing statement. Don't think this as like all your talking points, but if you'd like to contextualize your answers tonight in about a minute, this is your opportunity.
It's hard to be the first one. But like I said, I lived in a lot of majority-minority cities. And so my understanding of your lived experience is not clear, right? I don't know what it's like to be a black person in Asheville. I don't feel it the same way you do when things change. And all I really want to get across is that when we have these issues, which we all have issues, when we go into our corners and we go into an us versus them mentality, nobody wins. We need to have collaborative conversations. We need to be working together on all of these issues, and we need to do what's best for everybody. And that really starts with conversation. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll just say that I have decided to run for this because I want to be part of the conversation, and this is a great conversation. Thank you for keeping us on track tonight and doing a great job moderating. Really appreciate YMI, this historic building, and this historic institution for hosting this important conversation. And I've said this a number of times, I have so much respect for everybody up on the stage, and really appreciate everybody running, because we all want to see a better Asheville. We're running to be part of the dialogue, to work together, and I want to bring a collaborative spirit to City Council, and focus on making sure that when things come to council, the hard discussions have happened, we've brought people to the table, and we can actually move forward together as a community, because I love the city and I want us to be all we can be. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
1 minute. Well, I do want to just touch on also be aware that there is a cultural corridor coming. We should all be ahead of it, be aware of it, and make sure that our voice is leaned into any project and all projects that come about from that, especially in terms of talking about social enterprise and how things are going to look different downtown. For me, I'm running because I've been behind the scenes, using my voice in different spaces, being visible, and also understanding that the people have not only the power, but the answers to impact their own change on their own very lives. And I don't want to come up here and talk rhetoric or jargon or impress you with fancy things or emotion. I just want to be real. And I feel like it's time for Asheville to be real, right? And not be performative. So I might not be a native, but I have 2 high school graduates from Asheville High, AB Tech graduates, and Western Carolina. I'm not a native, but I have been connected from early childhood all the way to college with our young people. So yeah, I'm not a native, but best believe I'm invested in this town, and when I came out here as a teenager, you've invested in me. So I ask for your vote. Tiffany for Asheville.com.
All right, Tiffany. So, Kyle Turner, I am a disabled veteran, and I have 30 years of federal contracting officer, public trust position experience. What does that mean? It just means that I understand that we're spending federal dollars. I have over 25 years experience with contracting and procurement, so I'd like to make sure that our city does its due diligence to make sure that the money we spend is spent well. It's the cradle to grave process for procurement is the emphasis is given up front to ensure that the 5-year action plan that we get when we get to the 5 years, as we look at it before we get there, there's some room for improvement on that, possibly in our procurement section. It's very important that you understand that anybody up here is going to be engaged with or supported, that their service to the city will be based on the city charter, and the policies that go along with the city charter.
Thank you.
Yes, well, the reason why I'm running is to kind of shed a different light, give new ideas, be a different face, definitely a different voice. I'm not the most vocal, I'm not the most flamboyant, but, you know, I'm here to try. You know, we don't have enough African-American males trying to do these particular things. And I just wanted to stop talking to my friends and family about the issues here and come out here and say, look, I have the same issues you have. I want to solve the same problems that you have and bring just a different light to Asheville. I think we need to change in positions, bring new ideas and a different culture, add a little bit of pepper to the salt, you know, bring some flavor here, a little bit of soul. I miss the soul. This place right here used to be vibrant. We used to have school dances up here and stuff for the community back in the 80s and the early 90s. So that's why I'm running to kind of just say, hey, Asheville, there's somebody else here besides Keith Young. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna piggyback off of you a little bit. I wanna start by saying just how humbled I am to be in this room. Because if you know, you know. And when I'm here, I feel a certain spirit, and I'll just leave that right there. You know, my goal is simple. A city where longtime residents can feel rooted, right? One where we welcome new residents, and one where growth happens in a way that adds to opportunity. That is my goal, regardless of race. I just have to fight harder for folks who are never fought for. That's it. Because it's my hometown, like many of you. I guess I should have told y'all at the beginning, I'm Antoinette Mosley. I am your vice mayor. And I'd be so appreciative to gain your support. Thank you for coming tonight.
Hello, Jeffrey Burrows. First, I want to just thank you all for being here and being able to have this dialogue, being able to sit here and listen and begin building trust. And you know, I'm getting into politics coming from the community organizer kind of road, which means for me, I always put people first. And it's always got to be about the people, and it's got to be about the community. And I'm the kind of leader that leads that way. So I show up, I listen, I build a table big enough for us to all sit at, and I stay until the work gets done. I've been doing that down in the RAD since we had the hurricane hit, and I want to step up, and if you'll have me, I want to do it and serve the city as well. It would be a great honor. This city saved my life. That's a whole other conversation we can have. And it would be a great honor and reward to be able to serve in that capacity. And I'm a fighter. So jeffreyforasheville.com, I would appreciate your support. And thanks for coming out and participating in this tonight. It was really, really meaningful.
Yes, I'm going to ditto all of that. I've said this in some of the other spaces we've had the opportunity to be at, but your time, your energy, your attention, and your care is meaningful, and it's a gift to all of us. So we're really grateful. Thank you for that tonight. As someone who grew up in Asheville as well, like Vice Mayor Mosley and Bobby and Shonda, and Tiffany since she was a teenager, we are some of the people that returned to this city or stayed in this city. And so with that question that was, how do we do that for the youth? I think it would be interesting to talk to us. and say, why are you here? I know that I'm here and I'm even thinking about joining city council because I love Asheville. My family is still here. I was able to find meaningful work here with Read to Succeed, and then in some of the other spaces where I've plugged in. I was able to buy a house in Oakley with my husband, in part because of generational wealth, but I was able to root there in a community that felt very welcoming and family friendly. And I'm here because I believe in the power of everything that I've learned from all my neighbors, my colleagues, partners, friends, and just folks that I meet at events like this. And when I think about sitting on city council, I want to know that someone who's going to be there who's thoughtful, who discerns, who talks and listens to people, who can build consensus, and can work with others, and can finish talking when their time is up. Thank you. Jess Young McLean.
Okay, I'm Shonda Jackson, and as they said, I'm from Asheville as well. And you won't have a person that will fight harder for people in general. And I'm not expecting people to come to the Asheville City Council meetings or even tune in. I'm okay with going and knocking on your door or sending someone that knows someone to go and find out the real answer. Because a lot of times people perform because they tell you what they think you want to hear. So I want to hear the authentic answers and the real truth from people. I want to make it better for everybody. And as Antoinette mentioned, we have to fight harder for those who are typically underserved because their voices don't get heard. We get to hear from other people what they think certain people want, and that's not okay. So if you want someone that's willing to fight for the people all the time, then I'm the person. Shonda Jackson. Please visit my website, ShondaJackson4ABL.com. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 30 years plus of professional engineering, business, and finance experience. And we talk about infrastructure. I spent the early part of my career building infrastructure. We talk about housing. I've built housing and renovated buildings that include artist studios and other things for the community here. We talk about the economy, and I've run my own small business for 12 years and I understand budgets and accountability. And safety is something I've advocated for the last couple of years. So I think we need that voice on City Council. I think a lot of people that I talk to want to get back to some of the core services that the city should provide to make our city safe and economically viable. And I think people don't want us to keep increasing our staffing on areas that may not be as important to people's lives here in Asheville, where we can invest in the community as opposed to investing in a bloated bureaucracy. I don't want bureaucracy to be my last word, but visit my website at davidforavl.com. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I'll let y'all get off stage and meet with the people, but one more plug that tomorrow we have the other half of the folks running come be here, and then on Wednesday, Dr. Harrison Lavender, we speak with the congressional candidates. Thank you all so much.